In the spring of 2012, if you were a kid sitting in front of the TV waiting for your favorite Disney Channel sitcom to come on, or if you were, say, an immature teenager looking for reruns of Phineas and Ferb, you probably stumbled across a peculiar promo.
Is it on?
It's on. It's on. Okay, Friday night, 9:30 p.m. I, Dipper Pines,
And Mabel.
witnessed a creature which took a bite of my sock and ran into the closet.
Are you sure it's even in there?
The battery's dying. We've got to open it now or no one's ever gonna believe us.
Okay, but if it's a possum, you owe me $5.
Fine. 3, 2, 1.
It's not a possum! It's not a possum!
This was the first look into what was, at the time, Disney's next upcoming animated series, Gravity Falls, billing itself as a quirky show about some kids in a spooky backwoods town in Roadkill County, Oregon, having all kinds of supernatural adventures. What no one could have predicted was how this cartoon, filled with strange adventures and eccentric characters, would be laying the groundwork for tantalizing mysteries with ever-escalating stakes that would be the main influence of animated television for at least the next decade. All orchestrated by this mad genius draped in plaid. Gravity Falls was created by Alex Hirsch, a recent CalArts graduate. Hirsch's credits in animation before this were as a writer, storyboarder, and occasional voice actor on shows like Fishhooks,
He was disrespecting me. He broke my heart, so I broke his face.
The Marvelous Misadventures of Flapjack, and one of the shorts from Shorty McShort Shorts. Anyone else remember those? After seeing some of his student films, Disney approached Hirsch to pitch an idea for a TV series, drawing from his childhood experiences and throwing as much absurdity as he possibly could to figure out how long it would take for Disney to say no. They kept saying yes. Thus, barely out of college at age 26, Alex Hirsch was now creating Disney's next big animated show. Gravity Falls was picked up and set to debut its first episode on the Disney Channel on June 15th, 2012, debuting after the premiere of the Disney Channel original movie, Let It Shine. Yeah, this is back when the Disney Channel put a higher priority on their live-action content, so they would use the events around movie premieres to promote upcoming animated shows. A lot. Remember, Phineas and Ferb was first broadcast after High School Musical 2. Why do you think a pilot has these kinds of viewing figures? After a lot of drafts, an unaired pilot, and a whole lot of brainstorming on just how weird they could make this before Disney intervened, turned out it was very weird, the pitch for Gravity Falls, according to Hirsch, basically boiled down to, imagine if The Simpsons met Twin Peaks. And it was made by Disney. I've also heard described as X-Files for kids more than once. But there'll be plenty of time to go into the background and production of Gravity Falls. For now, let's take a trip just west of Weird and take a look at how the mysterious story of Gravity Falls began. Gravity Falls is the story of preteen fraternal twins Dipper and Mabel Pines, who are sent away from their Monday lives in California to spend the summer with their great Uncle Stan in his cabin in Gravity Falls, Oregon. Great town name, by the way, which he built into a tourist trap called the Mystery Shack.
The real mystery was why anyone came.
Early into the summer, Dipper stumbles across an abandoned mechanical compartment deep in the woods, containing a musty old journal. Dipper has noticed something off about this lumber town ever since he got here, and this journal chronicles many strange happenings that have indeed occurred in Gravity Falls, from ghosts to monsters to all sorts of conspiracies. Dipper is ecstatic to learn that his suspicions about this town have some proof behind them, and he's actually spending his summer somewhere really interesting and mysterious. But Mabel is too fixated on her first of many epic summer romances to pay it much mind, with a new boyfriend who's a bit strange.
So, what's your name?
Normal. Man.
He means Norman.
Yeah, Norman may have been somewhat unassuming just by looking at him, but after he spoke, it was clear something was off. You'll soon see that the paranormal masking their abnormality so badly that it becomes hilarious will be a regular occurrence on the show.
Are you bleeding, Norman?
It's jam.
Dipper consults the journal and comes to the conclusion that his sister's new boyfriend must be a zombie. However, while Dipper is on the right track that Norman is not what he seems, he misses the mark ever so slightly.
Is this weird? Is this too weird? You need to sit down?
I think this is the very moment where many viewers realize that this was a really good show. It's certainly where I realized that this show was different from anything I'd seen before. It sets up a supernatural mystery, lets it play out like it's the obvious answer that the kids need to crack long before the audience does, only to subvert expectations at the last minute and have it reach the next level of weirdness. It's ridiculous, but not in a way where the show is just making it up as they go, or if they are, they're really good at hiding it. For instance, this twist is actually foreshadowed, but it was hidden away in a joke.
Shabam! Oh wait, I'm sorry. Shabam!
That's gonna happen a lot on the show, and yet you will somehow never notice until after the fact. The show would already get points for having a solid story and tantalizing mystery, but to subvert expectations like that in such a ridiculous yet brilliant way would set the tone for the rest of the series to come and be the key to the appeal of the show in its first season. All of this results in a bombastic chase and battle with the twins and the gnomes, now stacked on top of each other into a giant monstrous gnome, because as I hope I made it clear at this point, this show can go pretty off the wall. With the help of some great payoffs from another joke earlier in the episode, they managed to defeat the gnomes. Yeah, on top of the solid mystery building, Gravity Falls also had a really good attention to continuity. For example, after Dipper loses his hat in the chase, he gets a new one from the Mystery Shack, which is his iconic pine tree cap that he'll wear for the rest of the series, and would dawn the heads of hundreds of fans across several conventions. In ways both big and small, from the silly to the mysterious, Gravity Falls' first episode, Tourist Trapped, made it clear that everything was important, no matter how ridiculous or easy to dismiss it might be on the surface. Case in point, this is how Gravity Falls' very first episode ends.
But who knows what other secrets are waiting to be unlocked.
Really? No one else gasped?
That was the last hook the show needed to reel in its newfound audience. I was sold on the show right there. I needed to know what Stan was doing and what was behind that vending machine. What was he planning? Does it have something to do with this journal, or is it something else entirely? There was such an ominous air permeating throughout the entire adventure that I couldn't wait to see how the next few episodes would build on all this. Alright, where's the next piece of the mystery? Well, here's the thing. This is where talking about the overall story of Gravity Falls gets difficult. The majority of season 1 has a lot of great episodes and adventures, but the pieces to the show's overall mystery are scattered about in between episodic events. If I were to just point out the essential plot details throughout, not only would I have way less to work with, I'd be doing the rest of season 1 a great disservice. Like most first seasons though, these early episodes spend a lot of time establishing the world and developing the characters. Story-wise, a lot does happen, we just don't know what any of it means yet, or how it's all connected, if it even is. Gravity Falls didn't invent the ongoing story in a cartoon series, but it, and arguably Adventure Time, popularized this way of telling it. Whenever an animated show had a continuing storyline or even a mystery, it was still pretty linear. The significant events built on top of each other to forge a clear path from point A to point B. If you found that you had lost track of the show and were confused by a major development, you could usually go back only 1 or 2 episodes to find out what you missed. That's not the case with Gravity Falls. Its continuing storyline acts as a true mystery, laying out clues in the middle of standalone episodes that allude to the greater mystery underneath the surface of an already strange and magical town, even in ways that the characters and perhaps the audience are not even aware of. Now, there's a reason this style of storytelling took off, because it encourages a level of investment where viewers would never want to miss an episode. It makes audiences of all ages feel rewarded for tuning in and really paying attention, noticing little hints the show was giving them, and eventually getting a satisfying payoff. The earliest demonstration of this is probably this mysterious-looking man who could be seen wandering around the background of the first 3 episodes. No one acknowledges him, his appearances are blink and you miss it, but some budding fans did indeed notice. By episode 9, The Time Traveler's Pig, he was revealed as Blendin Blandin, a time traveler from the year 2012 sent to clean up time anomalies, which is what he was doing in those earlier cameos. It both rewarded audience members for getting invested enough to notice these things and try to put the pieces together themselves with what little they had, and enhanced the replay value of older episodes where people can go back and look for the hints. It's an approach that became so wildly successful and praised that it started bleeding into shows that were more episodic before Gravity Falls took off, and influenced how most cartoons were structured throughout the rest of the 2010s and even beyond. It's a brilliant way to get people to form a relationship with your show, it just doesn't lend itself well to a summary format for a video like this. So, here's how we're going to do this. For season 1, I'll go through what I consider the 5 main mysteries the show lays out, breaking down why they're important, the role they play in the show, and alongside each other. Every episode of season 1 offers at least a nugget of information on all these elements, so that should cover a lot of the story that they gave us in these more self-contained but equally entertaining journeys. And if we're going to go in order of when they were introduced, the most logical place to start would be mystery number 1.
According to this book, Gravity Falls has this secret dark side.
Whoa! Shut up!
Gravity Falls. The town of Gravity Falls is established as weird right from the start, or at least unnatural to newcomers Dipper and Mabel, especially Dipper. Most of the townspeople just wave these accusations off as kids having active imaginations, but it becomes apparent right away that Dipper is right, and Gravity Falls seems to be a hotspot for all things weird. This sleepy town rests in the center of a vast forest covered in tall trees and shrouded in ever-present fog, the perfect environment for all sorts of anomalies to hide and live unseen. It really captures that feeling as a kid of just wandering in the most wooded area you can find and exploring. In fact, one of the main goals by Hirsch and the writers when coming up with ideas for episodes was to recreate childhood experiences laced with fantastical elements. But unlike us kids in the real world who had to use our imagination, Dipper and Mabel encounter all manner of cryptic creatures in the wide-reaching forests that surround Gravity Falls. The mantra of Gravity Falls is that nothing is what it seems. The creatures in this show are rooted in well-known fantasy tropes and urban legends, but with an extra weird twist to them. That incident with Norman the Not Zombie becomes the base model for the twins' confrontations with the supernatural, and sometimes you won't see the identity of the monster of the week coming just because it's so ridiculous. It's silly, but oddly brilliant. This should feel like a technique that's constantly trolling the audience, but instead, it's a device to make people really pay attention, even when they're laughing. Nothing is out of the realm of possibility in this place. With a few exceptions, if the writers can think of it, Dipper and Mabel can run into it. Like making a time machine that's a tape measure, or having a cheat code act as a spell to bring a video game character to life, having a lost merman living in a public pool, a monster who turns trick-or-treating into a life or death quest, or turning minotaurs into loud frat boys. Perhaps the show's most obnoxious creation. Even when they don't tie into the bigger mystery, these creatures gave the show a lot of its unique charm. Some of them are fueled by strong mystery and character development, and others are just vehicles to tell jokes. Which is a-okay because they're great jokes. The living video game avatar Rumble McSkirmish stands out for exactly this reason.
Stay perfectly still. I said stay still.
This is as still as I can stay.
But it's not just that many weird cryptic creatures call these redwoods their home. Weirdness itself seems to be drawn to this place. Anything from the outside world that makes its way to Gravity Falls is revealed to be just as strange as anything living there. In fact, Gravity Falls itself was built on weirdness. In the episode Irrational Treasure, we find out that the founding of Gravity Falls, which was believed to have been done by an ancestor of the local rich girl, Pacifica, is a deep government cover-up to hide the existence of Quentin Tremblay, the 8.5 president of the United States and the true founder of Gravity Falls. Apparently, he was so dangerously incompetent and nonsensical that his presidency was erased from history. A joke that admittedly was much funnier 10 years ago. Point is, it's not just monsters and mysteries that permeate this place. Gravity Falls is a weird town. It does have an out-of-touch small town vibe to it, where the townsfolk kind of just accept that this is the way things are, or just don't notice. Not really questioning strange occurrences, or waving off anything that might feel out of place or be challenging to confront. That's what makes the kids and anyone they recruit along the way stand out. They question why paranormal things happen so much here, and it increases the audience's appetite to find answers along with them. However, there is one place in town where the average Joe can get a taste of the strange and unusual in a way they don't have to question, but maybe they should. Mystery number 2.
Ladies and gentle tourists, looking around my mystery shack, you'll see many wondrous roadside attractions.
The Mystery Shack. The Mystery Shack is set up as the phony baloney equivalent to the very real supernatural things going on in the woods around it, which is a great source for jokes. Seeing Stan exhibit a half-stitched-together taxidermy disaster with a bad pun name, right before running into a real terrifying monster or life-threatening spell with a bad pun name, makes for some great contrast between the naive public perception of the paranormal and the real deal. It really says something that this is believable to the general public, but nothing Dipper claims that he's actually seen. Though, in fairness, the Mystery Shack isn't known for having the brightest clientele.
The rock that looks like a face.
Does it look like a rock?
No, it looks like a face.
Is it a face?
It's a rock that looks like a face.
But even the walls of the Mystery Shack contain mysteries and mysticism of its own. Over the course of the season, there seem to be a ton of secret rooms uncovered in the shack, concealed away for one reason or another. It makes for some pretty cool and intriguing additional mysteries, but makes the floor plan of this building insanely confusing. Seriously, don't try and figure it out. Many hardcore fans have driven themselves to madness trying to map the Mystery Shack out. And God, don't even get me started on this parlor. I get why it's there for story purposes, but seriously, where would this even go? It doesn't fit anywhere. It's like the most aggravating Professor Layton puzzle ever. You know what I was saying about how weirdness is drawn to Gravity Falls? Well, apparently the same applies to the Mystery Shack. There are a few episodes in season 1 where rare oddities will be found that turn out to be supernatural in origin. Most of these just seem to be tchotchkes Stan has picked up in his time as the owner of this tourist trap. The first instance of this is in the third episode, Headhunters, where Stan unknowingly purchased a collection of wax figures for an exhibit that turned out to be cursed, and because Stan locked them away, thirsty for revenge. In the episode Double Dipper, the kids discover that the copier in Stan's office can copy people. This obviously creates another life or death scenario, but don't worry, any copies made can be dissolved by getting them wet. Which I'm pretty sure is the solution they pulled from Kim Possible, but whatever, that could go even further back. Unlike the wax figures though, this didn't have a clear origin. We never find out if it was another accidental purchase or if Stan is even aware of its true properties. But none of that compares to the episode Carpet Diem. This was what officially made the Mystery Shack a place of interest. A strange, boarded off study of sorts, adorned with details that felt out of place with what we'd seen in the shack before, mainly being home to another anomaly, a carpet that can swap people's brains with static electricity. God, that's creative. This time labeled as an experiment. The rainbow prism, this dusty calendar from 1982, these misplaced glasses that Stan seems uncomfortable with the others seeing, just one touch after the other that didn't match with anything else in Stan's home, or with Stan for that matter. Which brings me to the Mystery Shack's greatest mystery, Stan. You might have guessed that fans were eyeing Stan suspiciously ever since that little trick he pulled with the vending machine. He spends most of season 1 as the oblivious guardian who lets Dipper and Mabel run off doing who knows what, appearing to be yet another adult who waves off the kids' wild claims about Gravity Falls. But as far as the viewers go, no one was buying it. And that reaction was intentional. All eyes were on Stan from the start, and I mean the very start. One of the distinguishing features of Gravity Falls were these codes found at the end of every episode, or littered throughout the show for the audience to decipher. The very first code the show ever gives us is in the opening, on this image that flashes at the beginning of every episode. Decoded, it reads, "Stan is not what he seems." And my God, was that enough for fans to read into every single thing this man said and did, sometimes way too deeply. The vending machine was one thing, but this room set off those alarm bells louder than ever before. No matter how much he tried to convey disinterest, Stan seems wary of this room, acting more uncomfortable than he ever had, until he realizes it can fuel his own amusement. Then he goes right back into greedy grunkle mode. But I cannot tell you how much fans were drawn to this room. It was everything that was odd about the Mystery Shack rolled up into one. The out of place relic, Stan's two-faced nature, just how old and mysterious this place seems to be. People read into every single minute detail of this homemade business. I would know, because I did it too. None of this answered any questions per se, but had us asking different ones. It wasn't the mystery the show was focusing on, but it was certainly the one that got the most attention from the fan base. Unfortunately, the kids don't pick up on any of this, so we were kind of on our own when it came to deciphering any of this. But Dipper might not see the suspicious behavior going on under his own roof, because he's spending most of his days with his nose buried in a book with as many secrets hidden inside as the shack itself. Mystery number 3.
It's hard to believe it's been 6 years since I began studying the strange and wondrous secrets of Gravity Falls, Oregon.
The journals. The show may take place in Gravity Falls, and Dipper and Mabel may live in the Mystery Shack, but as I mentioned in the summary earlier, Dipper's discovery of the journal is where the show's mystery properly begins. Someone was logging and studying these supernatural occurrences in Gravity Falls, and for a very long time it seems. For the rest of the season, the journal becomes Dipper's guide to the unexplained. He carries it with him everywhere and refers to it whenever he needs information on a creature or form of magic he comes across. The problem is that because the author mysteriously disappeared, the journal is incomplete. So most of the time, it's not very helpful.
Gnomes, little men of the Gravity Falls forest. Weaknesses unknown.
Oh, come on!
Not just that, but the author of this journal is a mystery in and of itself. Any trace of his identity has been scrubbed clean from the book through manic scribbling and ripped pages. The only clue we have about who the author is the six-fingered hand on the cover. An abnormality that would be easy to spot and had people counting fingers and questioning every hand-related injury whenever a new character was introduced for almost the entirety of the series. It was a good time. We can also infer some things about the author's personality from his writings. That he was an academic person, obviously, finding scientific relevance in what most would dismiss as hocus-pocus nonsense. But the further the entries go, the more they become laced with paranoia and warnings about being watched. We don't know if there's anything to the author's warnings or if he just went mad, but whatever happened, those fears could be the key to why he hid this book away and disappeared. We also know that the author wasn't the best at researching these strange occurrences in this town, because like I said before, even though Dipper and Mabel now have a book written by someone who dedicated years of his life to studying these phenomena, it doesn't always have the answers to supernatural problems they encounter. Often it's just more questions. Weirdly enough, after Dipper gets the journal in episode 1, it doesn't play a major part in a storyline again until episode 8, which was Irrational Treasure, where the author muses on the conspiracy behind the founding of the town but was never able to crack the code himself. I wouldn't think Old Town bylaws would be a part of this kind of research, but I guess marrying woodpeckers could be seen as an anomaly. Before that, Dipper only refers to it once in a while or is seen casually reading it. It's weird. Despite being the major mystery for most of the series, the journal doesn't play as big of a role as you might expect. That's not to say it plays no role. As the season goes on, the kids often use the journal to uncover magical relics to help them out of tough situations or make their lives easier. Because you quickly find out that these kids are not against using magic to cheat.
Isn't that kind of like cheating?
I guess so. Well, I'll see you after the fight.
This tends to give us some magical means to solve an everyday obstacle or insecurity, but surprisingly, that method of solving a problem is usually met with disdain. Yeah, we expect this method of solving problems to go wrong or backfire on the characters, and it usually does in ways that almost always get close to getting these kids killed on a near daily basis, but there's this extra level of disapproval at how insincere a magical solution tends to be. Gravity Falls was always great at adding this extra level of nuance to well-established tropes, and that's one of my favorites. Over time, you discover that the writings of this wise, older genius Dipper starts admiring causes more problems than it solves, a story device to get the kids in trouble instead of out of it. But again, the show is pretty aware of this fact, and pokes fun at it every once in a while.
When fighting a gremlin, use water only as a last resort, as water will make him much, much scarier. Ah! Who writes sentences like that?
But the journal still holds a lot of secrets. Tattered pages laced with cryptic messages and unfinished entries alluding to greater threats in the shadows of this sleepy Oregon town. So interpreting those entries became a mission for the viewers, hoping it would add more clues to who the author is and what happened to him. But it's tough to solve a puzzle when you don't have all the pieces. That number 3 on the cover of the journal, that's to indicate that this is volume 3, meaning that there are at least 2 other journals out there. So what happened to them and what secrets did they hold? Well, some of those answers lie with someone else itching to unlock the secrets of this town. Mystery number 4.
Hello, America! My name is Lil Gideon.
Lil Gideon. While Gravity Falls is mainly a Monster of the Week show, the dedication to continuity meant that it had its fair share of recurring villains, such as Lil Gideon Gleeful, a self-proclaimed child psychic who was advertised before he even appeared because Gravity Falls was on top of the foreshadowing game right out of the gate. The fun thing about Gideon at the start is that even in a town where we know things like magic exist, his psychic abilities are clearly not as real as he claims.
I'll read your mind if I'm able. Something tells me your name, Mabel.
How'd he do that?
But like at the Mystery Shack, the townspeople and the tourists who drive by are so gullible that they all fall for his less challenging version of mysticism. However, unlike the Mystery Shack, where it's clearly phony and Stan is a known con man, Gideon is beloved by the people of Gravity Falls, and uses his chubby cheek charisma to increase his influence in business, leading to an intense rivalry between Gideon and Stan. Some of the best rivalries, especially in cartoons, are the ones where one side clearly has an advantage, but the other side remains strong in their determination to come out on top against them. Stan and Gideon's feud has that kind of energy, usually with Gideon being the one who gets the upper hand with little effort. But Stan has his advantages as well, being a grown-ass man in a rivalry with a 10-year-old.
Oh no, not the broom!
Gideon's first appearance is in episode 4, The Hand That Rocks the Mabel, and at first it seemed like he was going to be another inventive bad guy who could possibly return should the writers choose. Almost every antagonist or monster in season 1 vows vengeance on the twins, and Gideon is no different, so there was nothing all that special about him at first, until the final moments of the episode.
Oh, you'll see, boy. You'll see.
Oh, come on. That was gasp-worthy.
I'd say this was Gravity Falls' first gasp-worthy moment. Confirmation that there was indeed more than one journal. It was another clue in the ongoing mystery, and a big one. It explained what the 3 on the cover of Dipper's journal signified, and how Gideon got all this knowledge of the supernatural. It perked up the audience's interest in the mystery. After the last few episodic adventures, this was a reminder that there is much more to the story, and they were going to raise many more questions before they answered any. Suddenly, Gideon was a force to be reckoned with, and became the show's first recurring villain, with his main motivation being to destroy the Pines family. So, does he want to do this as revenge for his humiliation, or to win Mabel's heart? Well, that's not part of it, but no, apparently Gideon wants the Mystery Shack. From information he supposedly deciphered from his journal, Gideon believes that the property the shack is built on holds the key to dark secrets and untold power. And as we discussed a few minutes ago, that's not entirely out of the realm of possibility. We'll talk about this more when we get to the character section, but Gideon is an intelligent boy who can and will bend any situation in his favor, manipulate an entire town in order to get what he wants. And what he wants is more power. But he's still a hot-headed short stack with stubby little legs, so there's only so much force he can impose to take the shack from Stan and his family. In order to do so, he's going to have to call upon an even higher power, the strongest and most mysterious cryptid the show ever created. Mystery number 5. Bill Cipher. Right from the start, Bill Cipher was much different from the other cryptids and antagonists on the show. Going back to that image that flashes at the end of the theme song, the thing that stands out the most is this little triangle resembling the all-seeing eye with a top hat in the center of a Gravity Falls-style Mayan calendar. Naturally, this was going to raise some questions, like what is the symbol and what does it mean? No one was really sure at first, but what was really spooky is that symbols and iconography that resembled this triangle appear constantly throughout the show. My personal favorite is this bootleg version in the arcade. Heck, the Mystery Shack itself is made up almost entirely of triangles. The penultimate episode of the season, Dreamscaperers, finally gives us some clarity on what this symbol is. A creature with a name, Bill Cipher. Get it? Because the all-seeing eye in the pyramid is on the back of the $1 bill? How are these writers so silly and yet so brilliant? So, who is Bill? Bill is a dream demon, able to invade people's dreams and even dig through their minds for information if he has a partner who allows them in. Gideon summons him from an incantation in Journal 2 to enter Stan's mind to find info he can use to help him get the shack. Where things get interesting, however, is Bill's reaction to this mission.
Wait. Stan Pines.
If it wasn't obvious Bill was going to be an important character before, it was clear here. From his introduction and in almost any conversation he has with our heroes for the rest of the episode, it's clear that Bill has been summoned to Gravity Falls before, and he knows of Stan, with memories flashing to what appears to be a younger looking Stan, and a symbol that resembles what we've seen of this tattoo on Stan's back. This was the most direct hint we had gotten at whatever might have happened in the past at that point, and people really read between the lines. Bill's dialogue is just really well written too. It's portrayed and worded in a way that you know it's important, important, but cryptic enough that it's not super easy to connect the dots quite yet. But there's also clues to Bill's past in Gravity Falls in the journals, in one of my favorite details in the series. In Journal 2, the author treats him as just another anomaly, with professional research notes he likely only just discovered. Bill's name isn't even written in Journal 2's entry on him, but it is in Journal 3. Dipper's journal has an entry on Bill with a more detailed and much more ominous description of him, warning the reader to not summon the demon at all costs.
Beware Bill, the most powerful and dangerous creature I've ever encountered.
With this, Bill became the missing factor. He had a history in Gravity Falls that is tied to both Stan and the author. With one appearance, he unified many loose mystery elements that had been floating around aimlessly. Important elements, but aimless. Bill was the thing that connected them all. How? We still don't really know, because the person giving us those clues is Bill Cipher, so you can guess how helpful that is. He's a Q, Beyonder, Discord type of character. All-knowing and all-powerful, but so high above the other beings around him that he messes with them in really absurd and sometimes horrific ways for his own amusement. But the main takeaway from this is that Bill is all-knowing, but he ain't all-telling. He's so disinterested in confronting our protagonist that he bails out of the final fight. With his powers, he can't lose, but at this moment, he can't win either. But he's interested enough that he'll give the kids an ominous warning before he pieces out until season 2.
A darkness approaches. A day will come in the future when everything you care about will change.
Ooh, ominous.
Bill was a big factor that the show was missing until then. A grand antagonist whose goals weren't clear, but what was clear is that it wasn't good. So, those are the 5 main mysteries laid out in the first season of Gravity Falls. And before anyone points this out, yes, I am very aware that there is another mystery playing out during the show. We'll get there when we get there. Now we've gone over what happened during the episodic adventures of Gravity Falls first season, we're gonna jump straight ahead into the season finale, where Gideon, fed up with Bill for not getting the info he needed from Stan, smashes his way into the shack and steals the deed to the house, meaning he now owns it and the entire property. Because this is Gravity Falls, and that's how property law works here, I guess. With a brutal swing to let you know that the dreams are over and the nightmare is real, we head into the season 1 finale, Gideon Rises, an episode that is pretty true to its title. Gideon has managed to take everything the Pines family has, leaving them feeling defeated and with few options to get back what is theirs, also living with Susan's grandma. While Stan is ready to give up completely, having lost his home, his job, and his only means of looking after the kids, Dipper and Mabel attempt to take matters into their own hands. But given how manipulative and conniving Gideon is, you can probably guess how well that goes. It's a traditional approach to a season finale episode for sure, but that's because it works. These kids have been in life or death situations in almost every single episode, and yet the stakes have never felt as high as they do in Gideon Rises. Even though Gideon was a smart and cunning adversary, the Pines were always able to come out on top against him. Here though, Gideon is holding all the best cards, and the Pines family are left without a deck to draw from. Gideon has crafted a scenario where everything he needs to succeed and every advantage he has is now easily at his disposal. He even discovers Dipper had Journal 3 and takes it for himself. Thinking that that was the only thing that could help him stop Gideon, Dipper sits in the dirt and gives up. And reluctantly, Dipper and Mabel accept their fate, that their summer is ending early, and Stan has no choice but to send them home. Now, it's easy to scoff at this because obviously the kids are not going to go back home, because then there'd be no more show. And I think season 2 was ordered by this point for extra security, just in case you got nervous. But the fact that it was tough to see a way for the Pines family to turn this around, not to mention how sad everyone looks to see the kids get on that bus, makes this feel real despite what your viewing instincts might tell you. It's tough to pull off that kind of feeling in a family show, but this is yet another thing Gravity Falls had a special talent for. This wasn't just the conflict of if Dipper and Mabel were going to get squashed by a magic something or other, it was to show how far the relationships in the show have come in the last 20 episodes. How estranged family members grew to become a closely knit family unit, or how strong friendships were formed with people who were just like you or you want to be like. Just the proposition of that being taken away, even if you know for sure they'll find a way back, makes these few scenes where that's the show's reality for a couple of minutes absolutely devastating. Ironically, in an episode that's more about testing the relationships of the characters and how much they need each other now that everything is falling apart, what starts to bring everything back together again is revisiting the mystery of the series and trying to unlock some of its secrets. You see, Gideon wanted the shack because he thinks the first volume of the journal is buried somewhere on the property, believing that bringing the journals together would hold the secrets to unlocking unimaginable power or the secrets of the universe or something. In fact, that's the journal he thought Dipper had, which would make sense if he thought it was somewhere around the shack, but as you might have guessed, there's a problem with that theory.
3? There are 3 of them!
Yeah, apparently Gideon didn't know there were 3 journals, which seems a little weird, but then again, I was never quite clear on if Dipper knew there were other journals before this, and as you might have noticed, these books aren't exactly comprehensive. Unfortunately, Gideon doesn't know that Dipper doesn't know that either, so he storms off after the twins in a gigantic robot duplicate of himself. You know, I'm starting to think this kid might have a bit of an ego. Joking aside, this is a great climax. In one fell swoop, Gideon shows his true colors, and the Pines family are able to face him head on, and with that determination, are able to put up a stronger fight against him. Dipper confronts his own doubts about if he really is a hero by jumping off of a cliff and punching Gideon in the face, and you know it's a major fight because Dipper actually bleeds, and Stan is able to destroy Gideon's goodwill reputation by exposing him for the little fraud that he is. It's just such a triumphant moment, especially following the lowest point for this family mere moments earlier. Their bond is solidified, and their strength in doing whatever they need to maintain it is rewarded. Dipper and Mabel get to stay, Stan is admired by the townspeople of Gravity Falls, for a few days at least, and Gideon is sent to prison. And not juvenile detention or anything like that. No, I mean actual grown-up prison, with scary adults with scars and tattoos and as many knives as Disney will let them show. Yeah. In true season finale fashion, Gideon Rises has a lot of returning aspects from the first episode and long-awaited payoffs. The gnomes make a comeback, McGucket builds another giant robot, they expand on the history behind the journals and the power and knowledge they contain and why they may have been hidden away, and perhaps the most important callback of them all, Mabel's grappling hook finally saves the day.
Told you it would come in handy.
Okay, no, that's not it. I mean, don't get me wrong, that was pretty cool, but the biggest payoff is in the season's final moments, where we finally see what was behind the vending machine. The moment that triggered my intrigue in Gravity Falls finally returns. So, what was down there?
After all these years, finally, we have them all.
Oh, great gasp, everyone. Bravo.
Yes, turns out that Stan was in possession of journal number 1. A surprise to at least half the viewers, I'm sure. But the real twist is in that together, the journals lay out plans to activate this massive futuristic device that's been underneath the Mystery Shack this whole time. And with no other indicator of what this thing is, why Stan has it, or what its connections to the journal is, the first season of Gravity Falls ends. Wow. Way to leave them wanting more. Hirsch and the writers have said that they wanted to make the season 1 finale big enough to appease the viewers through the upcoming year-long hiatus. This was especially risky as they still weren't sure the show would be coming back for a season 2. Mind you, if that happened, I think there would have been riots in the streets, but knowing it all works out, it fulfilled its intent brilliantly. The season finale resolves a lot of ongoing conflict in the first season, mainly the Pines' rivalry with Gideon and some of the mystery behind Stan, and demonstrates how much the characters have grown in the last 20 episodes. But the real kicker is that final scene. See, originally the plan for the cliffhanger was to just reveal that Stan had all the journals. While it is a cool reveal, a lot of fans were pretty suspicious of Stan already, so when the writers brought it to the artists and animators, they were told that it wasn't enough to get the shock value they wanted, and they were right. Okay then, why not introduce a whole new mysterious element into the series that ties into the already established mysteries? Like the best mysteries, it answers some questions, but raises many more. Just when you get more pieces to add to the puzzle, the picture starts looking much more different than how you thought, and it's even tougher to figure out what it's all gonna look like by the end. This new development is punctuated by the very last shot in the credits, zooming in on the scribbled warning in the journal that reads, "Trust no one." We'll have plenty of time to dive more into how this all resolves in the next video, but for now, let's do a quick overview of Season 1 and the experience it delivered on a story level. It's pretty well known that the premise of Gravity Falls was inspired by Alex Hirsch's summers and other memories growing up with his twin sister, Ariel, mainly by wanting to turn several summers spent with family out in the countryside into something more exciting than they were. But turns out, that's part of what gave Gravity Falls its charm, looking back on relatable childhood experiences and adding supernatural encounters to them. This not only made the stories more exciting, it was also an external way for the characters to face their internal problems and grow, whether going on the hunt for something strange or just stumbling into it while trying to find a solution to a personal problem. Setting the show in a backwoods town with our main characters living in a roadside tourist trap hits a very specific type of nostalgia, especially if you grew up in North America. It's a classic yet unconventional backdrop for these kids to spend their summer in, weird to those familiar with real-life areas like this and those who aren't, which fits the needs of the show perfectly and makes it stand out from a lot of other shows in Disney's library, most of which also take place during summer vacation because school is usually not fun to write about. Which makes sense because Alex Hirsch had said that he didn't find any of the kids' cartoons that were on at the time to be particularly exciting, which again makes sense because this would have been the late 2000s and television animation wasn't in the best place at that time. Let's just say that. So imbuing this series with such personal history and preferences, which for Alex Hirsch meant being really weird and mysterious, is what wound up making the show feel so distinct. This might also be because a lot of the crew on the show were fresh talent straight out of CalArts, with only a few longtime talents like the legendary Rob Renzetti on staff to make sure the show actually made it on air. But Hirsch and his team definitely remember what it feels like to be a kid, both the good and the bad, and that's rarer than you might think. You know that feeling when you see it, and Gravity Falls radiates it. This was also helpful in the direction the team took with parody and pop culture references. It was an unwritten rule, or maybe it was written, I don't know, I wasn't there, that any such references had to be at least 10 years old to prevent the show from becoming dated. And 10 years later, so far it's working. Except the paradox, which was several times, for it turns out boy bands are both trendy and timeless. Season 1 of Gravity Falls was meant to convey the kind of show this was going to be, and what we got was something that was imaginative and silly, with a dark and mysterious underbelly. There's a lot of typical cartoon stories told in these 20 episodes, but they stand out by having that more ominous nature. Every encounter with the supernatural was always a little weirder, a little scarier, and a little more unique. The show had an uncanny knack for being able to flip between being silly and terrifying, sometimes in the same moment, yet somehow it never had any tonal issues. Season 1 was definitely more silly than it was mysterious or scary, but once those aspects came in, they had real stakes and you felt the suspense. Some of the most memorable episodes from Season 1 were usually a lovely blend of both. Summerween is the perfect combination of silly and spooky, Hand That Rocks the Mabel has an unexpected antagonist that sets up for great jokes, and Carpe Diem opens with some genuine intrigue, only to end up an absolute farce of body-swapping mayhem. This distinction was especially helpful for carrying the show through the latter half of its first season, which had a lot of sillier episodes with lower stakes. Because the crew were wrapping up production on the earlier episodes, and since a lot of this group was new talent, you can imagine it was a little overwhelming. But arguably, what really got viewers invested in Gravity Falls was the mysteries. This is something else that ties back to Hirsch's childhood. He was obsessed with mysteries and conspiracies, backwards messages, secret codes, the Freemasons. Nothing I can relate to from my childhood, that's for sure. Almost every episode in Season 1 will have a heavy emphasis on one of the show's main mysteries. Not necessarily an exclusive focus, like for example, Irrational Treasures mystery comes from both the journal and the town, but usually, if the episode needs an exciting incident, it will come from one of these sources. A good showcase of this is in the episode Bottomless Pit, an anthology episode broken up into 3 shorter stories, all conveniently centered around one of the show's mysterious elements. The first story has Dipper stumble across something strange and magical in Gravity Falls, which is just McGucket, but it counts. The second story has Seuss and the kids discover a cursed pinball machine in the Mystery Shack, and the third story has Mabel searching for an enchanted object she looked up in the journal. It's a fantastic demonstration of all of the different ways the characters encounter the supernatural in the show. In a lot of ways, it gives you a little bit of everything that makes Gravity Falls the kind of show it is, including the fact that you can have a wormhole in your backyard and just kinda brush it off. because it's by no means the weirdest thing you'll find in this place. Then there were the encounters with Gideon and Bill. Usually Dipper and Mabel can maneuver around the creatures they come across by working together or having some kind of revelation of character. But Gideon and Bill are working with more power, knowledge, and motivation than any other adversaries, which makes them tougher foils and ones the audience are more eager to see in the hope that they'll spill a little bit more of what they know. Alongside the overarching mysteries, the show in general just had a strong dedication to continuity. Events will leave a lasting impression. The best way to enjoy the show is to just keep watching and never miss an episode. Due to how TV shows, especially animation, used to be syndicated, these types of lasting effects were usually discouraged, but Gravity Falls somehow got away with it, and it turned out to be way ahead of the curve. The crew took advantage of any opportunity they could to connect events and make sure those changes stuck. The S on the Mystery Shack sign may fall every time the theme song plays, but it doesn't happen officially until episode 3, and it never gets fixed. Waddles, Mabel's pet pig and one of the most beloved characters on the show, doesn't make his debut until episode 9. Bill Cipher's likeness is seen everywhere in both expected and unexpected places, and of course, there's Blendon. Aside from his early appearances, Blendon offers some more foreshadowing. Because of how long animation can be in production, certain episodes are in different phases at any given time. That's how they were able to insert Blendon into previous episodes. But they were also able to foreshadow future events with various backgrounds that were likely just finished when Time Traveler's Pig was almost complete, glitching out on his suit, which is something they would continue to do with all of Blendon's future appearances. Leave it to the Time Traveler to be connected so much to the past and future. Gravity Falls also had this neat little trick of reminding people of the mystery through jokes. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. This was insanely frustrating in the moment, but in hindsight, it's a clever little way of telling the audience, don't worry, we haven't forgotten about the bigger story here, but we're still not going to tell you anything. Psych.
If only people knew the truth, that hidden behind this vending machine, I secretly have
Boring.
Why do you delight in torturing me?
I see a lot of shows get called out for mocking fans for just being really invested. Whether or not that is justified is a case-by-case thing and definitely not a conversation for this video, but I've never heard that about Gravity Falls. No matter how often they would dangle that sweet carrot that held all the secrets of Gravity Falls, only to yank it away and laugh in your face while they're doing it. I think it's because of how it's framed as a joke, it makes the audience laugh alongside them. It's amusing in its torment. By the time Bill entered the picture, the show already had a healthy fan base, uniting in their common goal to swap theories and crack the secrets behind what's actually going on here. And boy, did it get enthusiastic and out of hand quick. Now let me stress that for the most part, the Gravity Falls community is an awesome one. Not perfect, no fanbase is, but passionate and not in a scary way. Not to mention smart. Codes were deciphered right away, and theories were swapped and built on it with every new episode. As well as supplemental material like tie-in books and even flash games on Disney Channel's website. Yeah, remember those? Those had secrets in them too. Gravity Falls fans definitely understood the assignment and broke down and read into every little detail. My favorite instance of this from season 1 is in Gideon Rises, where fans noticed this faint rainbow light reflecting off of an inkwell in a flashback related to the author and connected it to this prism seen in the mysterious room in Carpe Diem.
Damn, you guys are good.
For the most part, it was fun, and some people were even able to put together the show's entire central mystery with the breadcrumbs provided in the season, connecting the dots in the most minute, seemingly insignificant details. But let's just say, it got a little too speculative. There were some points where everything became a part of a theory. Stan was the worst victim of this. The show said he wasn't what he seemed, and thus everything he said became suspicious.
Wow, an author! Can you teach me how to read?
What? Author?
Seriously, that was the main support for one of the many theories around Stan for years. But hey, the show tells you right away that if you look hard, you'll find many hidden secrets and maybe even some clues to the ongoing story. And there's definitely something extra rewarding about following something that encourages you to really engage with the material to see if you can figure something out before the show tells you the answer. This is something we'll talk about more in the next video too, as we get closer to uncovering that mystery. In all honesty, it's pretty impressive that the mystery is set up as well as it is. You'd think this was all intricately planned out from beginning to end, but whenever Alex Hirsch described putting the show's story and mystery together, it sounds almost like it was improvised. The writing team appeared to be good at connecting the dots for the major plot points they knew they wanted to incorporate into their ongoing story, without necessarily mapping out the entire path in advance. Now, I don't want to make this sound like they were making this all up as they went. The show's story and mystery had a direction, but was still loose and vague on how they were going to get there, leaving room for the characters to breathe as they evolved along with the show, and allowing the show to follow a larger story while being able to grow and change as it went along. In hindsight, it makes the whole experience feel less boxed in like shows with predetermined paths can feel if done incorrectly. Once the season finale of Gravity Falls had aired, the crew and executives were a little worried that those final 2 episodes were so big, so ambitious, that they couldn't possibly top them. I would argue that the goal of almost every episode of season 2 was to prove their fears wrong. Season 1 of Gravity Falls was great, a refreshing and eccentric breath of fresh air in the somewhat dry climate that was television animation at the time. But it also laid the groundwork to become something truly special. The pieces were all there, but like any mystery, it would all come down to how it all came together.
But who knows what other secrets are waiting to be unlocked.
Hey guys, I thought I'd just pop in here real quick and give a very special thank you because this has been a highly anticipated and long-awaited project. I had good momentum in the summer of 2022, then I got COVID, and that took me out for like a month. And after that, it was just catching up with stuff, and I don't know, this project just kept being pushed to the side. But I never forgot about it. When I released that announcement trailer about 2 years ago, the only thing I asked was for you guys to be patient with me as I got this going. And you were more patient than I could have ever hoped for. I know it took a while for this to get started, and I needed that time to really get it going, but I hope it was worth the wait and you're excited for what's to come. I know I am. Also, since I'm here, real quick, I want to give a shout out to That GF Fan. If you're somehow watching this and you're not familiar with him, fix that. But he's one of the people who keeps the fandom thriving today, and he painstakingly archived a bunch of Gravity Falls promos, bumpers, and ads that I use in this video, especially the ones leading up to the series premiere. So thank you for that, HK. There are parts of this video that would have looked a lot more boring without you. And of course, a very special thanks to my patrons. You guys started this in the first place. We'll roll the credits, we can give them the thanks they deserve, and in the meantime, time to get to work on the next chapter. Thank you so much to everyone for checking out the first part of Going Back to Gravity Falls, and I want to give a very special thanks to our patrons for making this possible in the first place, including Chelsea A. Crandall, David L. Sproul, Jinx Productions, and Wait in the Wings. If you'd like to join these fine people in supporting my content while getting cool exclusive perks, including updates and some early access previews to the next part of Going Back to Gravity Falls, you can check out my Patreon page at the link in the description, as well as my other social media if you'd like to check out any of those. Thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.